We are live. I'm gonna give it a second for people to roll in. Let's loop the intro too. Let's go ahead and loop that. And I'll share this with my peeps. Know what I'm saying? Know what I'm saying, man? Oh, is it not showing on Instagram yet? We're live. We are live. It's alive. It's alive. It's pretty. How do I share this? Share to. All right, bear with me, Darren. I'm trying to get this shared out. I'm going ahead and like that. Boom there. Share that. I'm share that with T Peasy. I'm sure he'll want to jump in on the discussion. I'm just gonna spam everybody and see who shows up. Oh man, what am I getting myself into here? No, I'm not gonna do the spam that bad. Take him off of there. Take her off of there. So how's the weather out there in Colorado, man? Is it hot?
No, man. It's actually pretty overcast and cloudy.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's a little bit, you can see down here. It's a little bit overcast. We got the spring rains coming in from the mountains. So
Has it been raining a lot?
No, we've only had like 2 major rains up here.
Really?
Yeah. The mayor approved she approved a forestry initiative, which is going to aim to do 3 things. One, it's going to buff up the budget for the forestry department. 2, they're going to start planting new trees. And then the third thing it's going to do is going to help people like build the equity in their houses by having trees. Because once you look outside Fort Collins, there's only it looks like there's a bunch of trees in Fort Collins, but in reality, there's only 55,000. And most of those trees have had to be imported here. So they're oak, maple, willow, like all different types of trees. So now the county started building all this crazy stuff. And so they mowed down like almost 700 football fields worth of trees.
Wow.
And they know they were doing that until they got up to like 2,100. Like,
wow.
And they until like the wildfires set in, that's when they were like, oh snap, how's this environment being connected? And so now it's actually getting a lot better. So it's getting a lot better.
That's what's up. Is it still cost an arm, a leg, and a whole baby to live out in Colorado?
It does. And just like the movie theater, right? It is expensive to get in, right? But if you prepared for the amount of time that you're going to be there, if you bring your own snacks, right? If you chill out in the back, if you're not driving and you show up with a little bit of a buzz already, right?
Yeah.
It's not that expensive. But if you show up raw, only showered, just got your wallet and your phone, oh yeah, you're gonna run in pockets.
So in other words, Colorado is for wealthy folk only.
No.
Essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Because a wealthy person won't see the movies cheap. A wealthy person not gonna sneak in those snacks to the movie theater. They gonna buy everything when they get there.
No.
You know some wealthy people that snuck some snacks into the movie theater?
Me.
Okay. Well, damn. Listen. That might be the nigga in you.
It's not. There's a reason why a movie theater with cameras allows people to still bring in backpacks.
Yeah.
There's a reason why. It's not because they believe in breaking their own rules. It's because if they did crack down on security and so on and so forth, the amount of business they would lose.
Yeah.
People not coming there. Most people bring alcohol to the movie theater. They just want to sip maybe 3, maybe 5 drinks max,
Yeah.
right in the thing, like very because they want to actually enjoy the experience. They do have some horror stories and so on and so forth, but for the most part, they understand like, hey, just like let that slide. I
Yeah.
think one of the most dangerous things when not having money is applying stereotypes that don't exist. And then when you meet people who never had any exposure to anything that supports that stereotype, now it's a miscommunication because they think what you're saying is directed toward them,
Right. Right.
or you want to have a conflict with them because you're not talking about simple needs and respectful things that abide by a value system or produce results.
Right.
So that's it's an interesting thing to learn. Ray and I, we were breaking apart the American econosphere, I guess is what we call it earlier. But yeah, hit me with
Let's do the intro. Let's get this thing rolling. I got with me today, and I've had this is his maybe 4th stop by VRP, and this is my dog. If you're running back, I've talked about Darren before. When I first met Darren, I thought this man was a popo. I thought he was like top level CIA, feds, maybe I don't know, FBI. But I think that was my drug-induced paranoia back in the day. But you know, after meeting and spending time with Darren, it turns out this dude's pretty dope. So I got with me today a vet, military vet, and owner of Scott Free Trades, Darren Scott. Darren, welcome to VRP. How are you, sir?
I'm doing very well, good sir. Thank you for having me.
Man, I appreciate you for freeing up some time to come on and have this discussion on Juneteenth. I mean, what is it? Juneteenth and the American Continuum. Listen, this title, everything about this is definitely out of my freaking pay grade and expertise level. I'm just a thinker, man. So just for a quick disclaimer, I am not a know-it-all. I do not have all the answers. I'm not an expert in any particular field. I just think a lot. I enjoy having conversations about sometimes, you know, weird, deep and futuristic stuff. I really feel like we are in a very special and important time in history to where we are able to write a new future for not only our individual selves, for some of us that have experienced, you know, some bad ends and some dead roads, some unfavorable outcomes. But as a society, I think that we can, you know, redirect our trajectory and take our future and our living and our, you know, our society back. You know, Darren is real critical on, you know, the American society and how Americans fit into society and how we function in relation to how government has, you know, structured society. And I get the sense, Darren, that you kind of believe that American society and the government has the better answers and the right answers for us, wouldn't you say? Like maybe they're more like the parent to the American citizen, which is the child.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What do you go in a little bit about that? You've spoken to me about that, and I've heard that actually, that, you know, the American government sees themselves as the parent and the American citizen is the child.
Yes.
So when we look at that dynamic, what's all inside of that? They're writing the rules and the laws. They're enforcing the rules and the laws. As you know, we can break down how we see, you know, how the world's come in society, and especially in America, has evolved today. Like the rules and the laws are only enforced on a certain group of people, and they're not enforced on another group of people. So, does the parent have a favorite child?
Yes.
Okay, talk a little bit about that.
So The number one belief system that we use throughout the civilized world, and not the modern world, the civilized world, is money. It it is used more so than any other medium, um, as a side option to just outright warfare, just stealing things as they go. Since in the same way that there are many rich Caucasian Americans who do not, uh, they don't get to go to military bases. So they don't get to learn spades or shooting. They don't understand camaraderie. They don't understand many of these things, that would be, and they would be like a fish out of water. And so they develop these theories about how military people act. And now we are understanding what's happening with America's expansion. We chose money over war, which means whoever economically benefits the group more so, it's no longer a race to see who can get rich. Now, 60% of the world's money is on the American dollar. So now
Right.
every single American citizen making over six figure is automatically a parent of multiple people. Yes, there are going to be sections of people who waste that wealth. But in no way, shape, or form should we be enforcing, we should not treat any other human being in a way that we do not want to be treated.
Right.
If you do not want stereotypes to be passed as social trends that could ripple into social laws, that could ripple into actual federal actions, that would then enforce laws that make you exactly what they say you are, I suggest you don't give that treatment to other people,
Mm. Wow. So
because that's literally half of the struggles that I have seen. And if you say that you have to be wealthy to come to Fort Collins, I came here dead broke,
yeah, yeah.
homeless, no benefits, with a spine injury, half blind, in diapers. 4 years later, I have a $630,000 house. I have a job. I have a business. I have my children back in my life, and I follow the Lord's decrees. Now, if there are people who want to move to what's called an economically sound environment, it's not going to work out. In the same way that you understand, you have uncles, you have grandmas, you have your parents, and there are certain things that you can do and not do to get the most amount of benefits out of those houses. You understand that
Hmm.
concept, correct?
Yeah.
That's how white folk, rich white folk, that's how they look at banks and business. The way we look at barbecues and spades and a chance to settle social disputes and talk to each other and trade secrets and maybe see who needs a new car or something like that, that's what they do in business meetings. And so when I finally got out of the angry blackmail experience, it was like being thrown into space, man. Like literally, it was
Mm.
thrown into space. Because overnight I went from you, it, nigga, boy, faggot, fuck boy,
Yeah.
broke, no need for it, put it in jail or put it down, to now I moved to Fort Collins. The police drive me home. They give me a light for my blunt. It's white folk who pick up my trash.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
crazy to go from being spit on, kicked on, dead broke, told that I am one of the biggest threats to someone. That is like an existential factor beyond my control that I've never been able to intervene with, except by wearing this hat. And I understand the mechanics of what's going on. So when you ask these questions, but you're not willing to accept the whole truth, then that means you want only the piece of the truth that benefits
Mm.
oneself.
Well, who doesn't do that though? I mean, I feel like
No,
Every
whoa,
person,
whoa, 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 whoa,
but and I
whoa.
get what you're saying. I don't think it's healthy at
No,
all.
no, no. Whoa. Hold
It's
on.
not healthy, and I will say that.
Health aside, I speak the truth and I follow the Lord's decrees. And it hasn't failed me. I don't worry about what lies I tell because one of the Lord's decrees are thou shalt not lie.
That's right.
Covers me pretty much the whole way. It's like an insurance plan.
Yeah.
As long as I don't lie, I won't have problems.
Right.
You're asking who doesn't do that? Most of the outcasts of society.
Who doesn't follow those decrees?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Majority of them.
Right.
The people who look at a world modernizing itself and choosing a medium called the American dollar. The American dollar is based off the American government. The American government is based off of three things: English common law, Christian Judean values, and what the American people want, which is why it was the Bible, slavery, and so on and so forth. And now it's gay marriage, uninhibited drug use, uninhibited alcohol use, uninhibited chemical use, and trillions of dollars that the American people are allowed to spend on not working together. So
That's funny
there
how you say
is credit to both sides.
that.
And the most suffocating aspect of growing up is giving truth and credit to the other side of what you hate. That's why the Lord says, love your enemies, because you may be killing somebody, you may be banging on them, you may be winning the argument. You also may be poisoning the land, fucking up the air, destroying the water, and making it hard for the people that you swore to protect to live in the first place. But most people don't get that report, so they act like that. So what I'm saying is, yes, there is a favorite. No, the roles and the responsibilities and the benefits of that favorite are not some Disney, they get to go out on vacation every day, so on and so forth. It's not like that at all. So I just let you know that. Like,
Yeah.
I think one of the most powerful things about Black men getting wealth is recognizing what wealth we have. What do we have? All right. We don't have this. We don't have Rarers. We don't have reparations. We don't have, everybody doesn't have houses, so on and so forth. My friends and I, we deployed as brothers, all Black men together. And the first thing I'm going to tell you is the first 3 bags fucked up. Every single person, with degrees or without, tall, short, Black, white, Mexican, whatever. When you take people who don't know how to hunt and you just drop off elk, moose, and 2 tons of salmon, and you don't teach them how to prepare it, you don't teach them how to cook it, you don't teach them how to store it, what's going to happen?
It's going to spoil.
That is wealth. That
Yeah.
is human expansion. That is the
Beautiful.
fragile soul of human civilization.
Yeah.
And the threat of handing it to people who are not ready for it, in the face of people who do not want it to exist whatsoever. And I'm not talking about people in the States. Every single person in America, by definition, is an ally. That's a countryman. Yes, they hate that I'm Black. They may hate the military. They may hate everything that I love. They may not eat meat. They may not eat vegetables. I don't know. So, but I need to let you know these things, because when I made money and people started looking at me different, it was because of how I was treated based on how I treated others. And when I professed hate, it slowly started to push me like a video game. Like when you get to choose good and bad.
Yeah.
When I chose little white lies and little exaggerations and little problems and little issues and little conflicts and little blah, 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 it slowly pushed me into crowds and events and vibes and energies and products and work and life cycles that had those stereotypes enforced. Right now, if you feel like not giving a fuck about your life, right now, you can go hit the liquor store, down 3 bottles, go hit a rock concert, because there's one going on right now, mosh pit, drive home drunk. You can choose to do these things, but you understand at the base level, yeah, that's fucked up. Yeah, it's illegal. Yeah, it's immoral. Yeah, so, but it would mess up my economic landscape. It would mess up my ability to have a future.
Right.
Okay, so that same level of common sense, look at history, racism, the American infrastructure, Juneteenth, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And to answer your question about Juneteenth, you play spades, right?
Man, don't judge me, but no.
Dang.
I don't know how to play spades.
You play bones?
Really? Yeah, I can play some bones. Yeah,
Okay.
I'll shoot some
You know
craps.
what it is when somebody call bad money?
No, I don't. I never heard that term.
Bad money.
What does that mean? Yeah.
Bad money is basically if you win a hand, and let's say it's 50 points, and you say it's 45, you lose the next up 5. So you lose those points. Does that make sense? Because you call bad money. Most people call bad money under, but a lot of people who cheat will see that there's 50 points due to them. They'll say, I got 70 points. Grab the whole pile, turn it over, and wash. And that's cheating. So we call that bad money. Juneteenth is African Americans getting the federal government to tell them that the Confederate government got caught reneging, got caught counting bad money. The Emancipation Proclamation came out. The people could read. But they said, nah, black people ain't free till the season's over. Or I have free foremen working on my plantation.
Yeah. They got to finish his job.
All the reasons that these people cannot stop being slaves right now.
Right. And just to interject, Oklahoma slaves weren't freed until 2 years later after the date of.
So the executive order was passed on Juneteenth.
Right.
There was an executive order from the White House passed, like an actual. Now the White House is what? The head of the president is the head of the military. So the White House is the hub of the offices and the administrations that manage the things around the presidential aspect. So whenever the financial aspects of America start to collapse, we start to depend on the one thing that is standing up, which is the military, never folds. So that's how the US president became to garner so much. In reality, once the Emancipation Proclamation was out and the Civil War was pretty much the sore loser complex, the economic needs of the South, the burning bridges at both ends, the idea that the South stripped and humiliated, whipped, and executed their own people to continue enslaving African Americans opens up an entire different branch of conversation to what happens when, okay, cool, we had one big issue. There were two major sides. Each side had two different sides of how they wanted to approach conflict 1. This is conflict 2. Now conflict 2 has collateral damage. Now starting another third level amount of conflict. This is the basic structure of how conflict escalates. So we never really sorted that out as a country. We just kept advancing. So yes, when the government with no internet, no police, no nukes, no jets passed out a piece of paper said, get along. And people said, that shit, who the you think you talking to? We got guns all that. And the government has to say, okay, all right. So that's why it's called Uncle Sam, not Father Sam, not Fatherland, not Motherland, not none of that. It's called Uncle Sam. Because what does a rich uncle do? He shows up, he pays the bills, he whoops the kids, he gets the house. He don't clean the house. He pays a maid to come clean.
Right, comes to the house. Right.
Okay.
So cool. So let's go back to the
favorites.
The favorites. Yeah. So because the Juneteenth fits, I feel like fits right within it. So at that point, then Uncle Sam, or Big Daddy Joe Biden and them chose
Daddy Joe Biden. Joe Biden is operating against against Uncle Sam.
Okay. All right, and that's we'll get to that point, yeah, because I'd like to know what you mean by that a little bit further, and it kind of makes sense to me too. But so they chose the Confederates to be their favorite, essentially.
No,
So how did the Confederates get so much power? And
because
and
they
how,
all
because
right.
they killed Lincoln, right? They
Uh-huh.
assassinated Lincoln after he issued the Field Order 15, right? 40 acres, and then to the newly freed slaves, right? And
Yes.
then at that point, it seems like, hey, the Negroes might be the favorite. No,
Okay. The idea, once you do settle that, just like your own kids, this kid is your favorite in these categories, this is your kid favorite in these categories. You don't love all your kids the same. I don't. There's a differential between how much attention, how much feedback, how much benefit, how easy they are to work with, so on and so forth. If you are looking to find out that white people are the favorite, or the Confederates are the favorite, or the racism are the favorite, or what you hate or are against or you believe is hurting you is the favorite of the system that is against us. If you are trying to implement a line of logic and you offend, backhand, disregard multiple lines of logic, historical value, and financial accuracy,
right?
you not
Systems,
only insult and disregard and
right?
disconnect the people involved with the actual truthful aspects of that,
Right.
but you'll lose what you're actually after. We are
Mm,
after the economic rise of our people.
that's right.
Who are our people? The African American and now descendants of slavery, which was the implementation of harsh practices at
Mm,
multiple levels throughout this country, throughout the timeline of this country.
right.
Enslave, kill, or corral us.
Mm,
And through their own laws and through the economy expanding, African Americans have gone from literal slaves to working class citizens
mm,
with the ability to complain about a level of success that no other prior slaves in any other free country could ever dream of seeing.
hmm.
You may see black people broke. I don't see black people being forced to bow with their heads smashed in the ground. I don't
Right.
see them being whipped on posts anymore. We
Right.
are having hate crimes. We do have economic disparities. We do have problems. Yes, I get it. But if we're going to talk about progress, I want to talk about progress, man. I want to
Yeah.
share with you the good things that are happening.
Right.
Yeah, African American men, especially, we got a fuck deal. It sucks. There are people who profited from it. I got it. Let that shit go because you're going to need that energy to manage the businesses that you will get in order to pass them on to your children to finish the paperwork in order to start the change and move those things along.
Mm,
Or we can make digital products that our children will see in 10 years. And the first 15 minutes will be what we argued about, what we were hurt by, and what we believe is happening, rather than what we're actually working toward giving to the future. Does that make
yeah.
sense?
Yeah. That makes sense. That makes sense.
That mindset will turn off all that noise.
Yeah.
Here's
Yeah.
here's the here's what it is. There is a working crew in one company. That's America.
Mm,
The people who work the hardest come up with smart ways to look after their fellow man, take the sacrifices along with the benefits of their environment, and use their time in a valuable fashion, those people will succeed. What they do with their success is another step in that journey because there are many people who get success and then waste it. So I'm going to let you know it's like that more than the government says, I pick group one, fuck everyone else, and I don't care what happens to the country as long as group one gets their candy. That's not the deal. So it's just, I have been going to these meetings, man, and it is a struggle to deal with people trying to learn, trying to relay their frustrations, as well as forgetting to ask about the paperwork, the logistics, and the common sense to get the things that they want done in the first place.
Mhm.
So I share that with you because you're the first person I've met out of all these groups who's come this far in asking the right questions as far as developing an economic landscape, like developing new roads, a new platform, new technology for us to succeed, like you said.
Yeah.
So in the favorites category, there are the best performers
Right.
in certain aspects. We have the best performers per group, and like people in their 20s who are not going to college. What trades, professions, ethnicities, and genders are those people? What is their per capita spending? What is their per capita? How much money does it take to keep them on the road in this race? How much are they saving? So it's something to look at those parameters. If you take your passport application and you take your taxes, those questions will tell you who is the favorite. If you fill them out for 330 million people in 10 different groups, it will literally show you who gets degrees, who pays their taxes, who commits the most crimes, when and where, and so on and so forth. And that's just a comparative analysis. Is that a on-ground narrative and experience? No. So that's why I share these things with you to let you know. But yes, there are favorites, there are high performers,
Right.
and there are all the different roles that you have seen people be at every job you've been to.
Right. And it all makes sense, man. I think that, to build what we have, they say America started off as an experiment, and it probably still is an experiment for the most part. But to get to the level where we're at, where we can, set plans, make accommodations, meet those plans. And between those plans, you have these experiences: dinner, shower, cold water, warm water. You even have, utilities that kind of keep that in place. And you have people that are an infrastructure to where you're laying down fiber optics, internet, and you got cell phone towers. You're able to communicate. And, and you said it earlier, like when we're having this conversation, you want to talk about the favors, you were missing the piece. The most important piece is those people that have aligned and outlined and created this system of things to exist. It's not to look at the favorite as with resentment or bitterness, but to look at it for what it is. And it is important to not only look at the situation with like an open mind, but with some type of appreciation and admiration. And so there's no disrespect from me whenever I speak of, hey, Uncle Sam or Daddy Government got a favorite. It is what it is. But when you look at the favorite that they've elected, you can't help but to see, some will say, an evil genius plan, but also some of the systems that they've created for us to enjoy this living experience in America. And so I do say that with the whole heart. I do say that with understanding that those men, and I forgot what year it was, and I'm not an expert. I'm just someone who I guess thinks a lot, but my thinking to how they got into this room in Philadelphia to come up with the Constitution, I think it's brilliant. I think it's a brilliant feat. And for them to come together to say, hey, let's go by this being this constitutional right, and I think it's just brilliant, and the systems that came from that, I think is brilliant, and I think it should be appreciated on a certain level. However, there are those.
You can hit me with the cut stuff.
Yeah. However,
talk about the bad stuff. I just said carrying it in the heart and the language, and I'll explain.
Yeah.
I'll explain a real world example that's gonna blow your mind on not allowing white culture mechanics into black successful thinking.
Yeah. Well, and I think those would you call them social mechanics?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think those things they became a thing to where you can look at and see how it works, but also you can look at it with a mind of ingenuity to make it better, right? And I feel like in a continuum, I feel like that's where we're at, where we can look at how we can improve these systems that have already come from. Would you call it social systems? Wait, what's the word? I'm sorry. Let me write that down. Social what?
You have social mechanics.
Mechanics, yeah. So, and we could say those came from mostly the Caucasian or European race, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
And so those things have come into this reality that, we can manipulate to work better from more of a Black perspective and Black American perspective. But to the Juneteenth part of it all, how they had this idea, these white men, I'm sure there were some Black men in the room, said, hey, we're going to write this Constitution. They debated about it and they were like, all right, great. So from there, we could say railroads, cotton was king, right? All these things that fueled that system were on the back of the Negro, the slave, right? And so is it fair to look at that and have that discussion? And I get the sense that sometimes you feel like we shouldn't be so critical of the government because it's doing what's necessary for us to be in the position we are today. But at what point can we be critical and saying, hey, we helped build this. Now, where's our cut? Now we see that we've generated all this wealth and we're in the midst of a great generational wealth transfer. You're getting the wealth that we're off of my ancestors back, but I'm getting debt. When are we able to be critical in that way?
Nah.
And is that fair?
No.
Okay. So explain. Why is that not fair? To say, hey, we helped you robbed our ancestors of knowledge of who they are, right? I became a part of some property. And does this go back to the Bible principles to where, hey, this is written in the Bible, so you have to live this? Or were we, forced into these living circumstances to generate the wealth that is being passed on right in front of our faces and the debt that's being passed on within our group? So speak a little bit to why you believe that's not fair to question and be critical in that manner.
Oh no, I believe it is fair. I thought you meant, is the practice fair?
Okay. Yeah.
It's fair for you to critique that.
Right.
But when you critique something, you have to make sure that you critique it with the right scale.
Okay.
For instance, when your kid plays sports, it's probably best not for you to walk up, punch them in the gut.
Right. Yeah.
When they make a game-winning shot.
Yeah.
If your son makes a game-winning shot in a game and you run off the field and punch him in the gut and say, stay humble in front of everyone, right? That's not exactly going to garner the good stuff for it. So how to look at that and making sure that we measure what our response is to that is the biggest thing. So here's how you can critique it in a fair way. If the African American community got together, I have answered your class and for it. So let me just put it in simple terms. The government, finances, banks, rich folk, everything you know, that's A1, right? B1, that's Black people, the descendants of slavery. Everyone else is C1. That's just, and they can be in all their different categories as much as they want. That's the larger pool. Let them be that.
All right, hang on real quick. Banks and economy, A1.
Yeah.
B1.
African Americans who are descendants of slavery.
Okay, ADOS. All right. Okay. And then
C1 is everyone else.
Okay. Everybody else.
Affected by America, around America, influenced by America, sees America, however it is. What I found is that now that I'm critiquing, so is it fair to critique it in that way as African Americans? Yes. How could it backfire? What would we do if it backfired? If we went to the American government and we said we want to run those checks and those pockets right now, we want to see who is due what.
Right.
And we found out that African Americans were under and we owed money as a group, as a collective, as a business. If we found that America expanded to 330 million people and then the world expanded to 8 billion people, and now our presence of what they owe us versus what we have spent versus what is due to us if we perform at this level. Do you understand the differences?
Right. Yeah.
Okay. If we were to get on that track, right back to what you said, what I said about the passport application and the taxes, that would be the critique that they would pull out. Who has a degree? Who has a criminal history? This, who has that? Now the wealth no longer goes from family to family. It goes from people who act right to people who act right to people who are crooked. To be protecting the people who act right from the other people who are crooked. And there's a vicious cycle to that. So, yes, it is fair to critique it. Be careful what we ask for is my main thing for it. And I can say that because we have watched the expansion and so on and so forth. How we perform economically and how we are treated socially are two different things. And it allows us to give credit to the evil things that happen to African Americans without suffocating the good of the future that we need in order to move on and get things done. And so that's what I would see and to answer in so far as the economic hardship, most economic hardship and the disparities between Black wealth and white wealth comes from miscommunication more so than a plan.
Okay, and I don't mean to interject, but let's look at the social barriers that have existed since we're in this Juneteenth conversation, from the Emancipation Proclamation to the Negroes down in Texas realizing that they're free. There's been social barriers from those points to today even exist. So can we not have a handicap? And is there a way to reevaluate it with that in mind? Because I think that it's important that we acknowledge the systematic barriers that have been put in place.
Why does this thing keep zipping in and out of your
so I'm hang on, I meant to change it to me asking the question. So it's like it's like a solo. So bring me up there by myself. Yeah. I forgot to tell you I'll be doing that. All right, let's do that. Yeah. I'm going to play a little bit of music in the background, though, because it kind of makes it a little bit lighter. Yeah.
All right. So hit me with your question so this way I can answer it in the
right. So when we talk about looking at, the A1, B1, C1, all right, and we're looking at how we have the conversation about and being critical about how it's evolved over time. And there's a particular way that you're saying that we should have this conversation. Yeah. And they've created this criteria essentially by, savings. And you mentioned savings and who's graduating college and who incarceration. When do we apply the social barriers that have caused the incarceration numbers, that have caused the, and is there a handicap that might be able to add to?
Yeah. All right. I got it. Okay. So first off, let's get to the root thing right there. I apologize for not answering.
No, you're okay. I'll be making shit confusing, so you're gonna have to forgive me.
The root causes of this is America was born and incepted. They made the Constitution, the rights. There's a whole bunch of crooked shit happening, so on and so forth. But the main thing, there wasn't an infrastructure. There wasn't a government at the time. There weren't established police departments. There weren't dams. There weren't sewers. There weren't anything. It was just dudes shitting in streets, choosing not to shoot each other. Like, that's pretty much what we had when it first started.
Lawlessness.
Now, when you look at what America has now, from gun rights to gay marriage, from land ownership to homesteading, from now, emancipation is no longer about Black people being free. It's about kids leaving their parents at 16, 15 to go work. So the original Constitution, and this is going to make people feel however they feel, the original Constitution did not include abortion, contraceptives, sodomy. It didn't include right to privacy, substantive due process, or high wall separating church and state, for all the reasons that they don't have that in ancient societies. It's for the same reason that we didn't have that in the Constitution. We made these barriers as we went along in order to do
intentionally or unintentionally. In some cases, intentionally, probably. Would you say?
Yes.
Okay.
It was intentionally.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
There are people who came at it in order to get theirs. Yes.
Right.
Here's the thing. When America was coming up and the world chose to be like, okay, we'll use that currency, there became a race for the power, for the reins over that, while that horse was getting bigger and bigger. So now we have come into this, and yes, there were groups against Black people. There were groups against white people. There were groups against segregation. There were groups against integration. There are groups against the military, even though the American economy is based off of our military, protecting our consumers.
Right.
So, like, we give people the right to hate their own government and isolate their own neighbors, and they take full advantage of that. But when you explain to them that, yes, there was a measuring stick, no, most people did not know what they were doing back then. They had to make a standard by which we are arguing should have been enforced or perfected then, before it caused the problems it is now.
Yeah.
An experiment went off. There has been some runoff. There have been some people who got burned in the explosion. There's been issues with it. Got it. The machine is too big to shut off now. Okay, got it. Now that machine is supplying power to more people in a good way than the people who were hurt in a bad way.
I can see that.
Those people who were hurt in a bad way, give them. You want to know how they pick favorites in Black people? Union soldiers who served in the Civil War, which was only 4 years, were the first group to be considered for reparations in this country. Because why? You're like, okay, cool. If we take Black people, let's divide them up into groups. Who did military service? Who actually fought the South? Okay, where are the descendants of those people?
Right. Let's give them 40 acres. And let them go plot and till on it.
And if you find out that half of them are child molesters, if you find out that half of them,
okay, I see where you're going with that,
committed suicide, or if you find out that half of them are alcoholics, or if you find out that half of them are already billionaires,
right?
If you find out that one of them is a presidential candidate in the middle of a Russian-Chinese spy investigation.
Yeah. So once they break down that criteria, so they're saying, hey, let's create an economic template, but here's the criteria.
Yeah.
And so that criteria is to make sure that the wealth isn't wasted, right?
Here's the thing. You're asking why is it we don't do what's already been done and needs to be cleaned up?
Right.
Respond to an issue with set directives and guidance, with nobody set in place to direct or guide it, with the full support of the people being directed and guided.
Okay. So would this boil down to, and I need to walk up to this.
Yeah.
Because I've heard people say, well, the Negro is a young race.
That's not what's happening.
Huh?
They can say what they want. That's not what's happening.
Well, so would it be like, well, the Negro is not organized enough to be able to handle the wealth that they're asking for? Essentially, is this question I have.
If you wanted to boil it down to where African Americans, as far as ADOS, the descendants of slavery, are they one? We know for a fact there is no central organization of all African descendants of slavery
Right.
in America at this time. There can
Right.
be, and there will be. Okay, cool. Got it. If you found out more than 40% of those descendants of slavery did not want their benefits, and the failure rate was 32%, meaning you had to force 8% of those people to take it. Because now we're asking for what was called individualized cases. We're not asking for a collective benefit across a whole group that makes it. You're asking for these people lost this land. These people didn't have their land. These people.
Well, that's what's happening now, but ADOS AF is asking for it as a collective.
They asked for a collective.
Yeah.
Okay. If they asked for a collective, that means they need a collective standard.
Right.
They need a collective list. Who, right. How many families, where? The government can't just say, here's the checkbook, you got wronged. Because what happens in 20 years when white people jump up and say, we've been dumping trash, puffing up chemicals, hauling down, servicing the sewers of this entire expansion. We have been paid less than minimum wage. We have been forced into modern slavery.
Right, right.
Where are our modern reparations?
Right.
Because now slavery is a definition. The main reason the government has been off about doing the reparations is not only the cost, but it's also what the American people would do with it. Would they not only use the money properly, but would they not use it to seek revenge and thereby repeat the same cycles that they just got out of by now making another working class out of another race of people who will then have another generation that they cannot pass on wealth? Because that's the price that they have to pay in order. Do you understand?
Yeah, yeah.
Now, those people, when they get the bag, now need to oppress their oppressors who had their, and that is what has happened in America legally. We changed how people vent rage, wrath. We changed how we kill and confine each other in order to get land and direct labor. So, under those changes, right, we have it be where we need to learn how to perform in that game. And so that's why I really hand that to you, that I am a real world example. My friends are real world examples of what happens when we understood, okay, this is a preserve. This is a fucked up game. What are the rules? If I got done wrong as an African American, how did I get done wrong? And for how much? Okay, where would that come from? I found that out. I joined the military. I left America, got off the preserve, came back. I lost everything. I went straight to Uncle Sam. I said, what do you want from citizens? You want me to work 18 hours a day, 6 days a week, sometimes 7 days a week, or be on call. Okay, that's a little bit much. I want the freedom to lay around and have the hardest working, most expensive economy benefit me without me working at the same rate that it's expanding. When I have really boiled it down and I have traveled this country to 38 states and I have talked with people and I have put jobs in front of them, the first thing that they come up with is reasons why they don't want to do that job. Because we have the knowledge of what those jobs represent in a social setting. Right now, people can empty trash for $70,000 a year.
You get paid.
You can live in Fort Collins off of 70 grand a year. You can live in that. But the amount of people I've seen, military, you can make 40 grand a year, working 4 years, get out, be able to buy a house, zero money down, and have your degree paid for. 1% of people who join the military get their degree. 1%. Those are the people with the ability to get a free degree.
Wow, that's crazy.
Here's what I'm saying. When we look at specialty groups that have been done wrong, who have been traumatized, and then we flood them with benefits and money and opportunities, usually we find that they really just needed community and settings. They needed people to be around them. And now we are looking at this. If you went down to the communities and you handed a military deal to every single person making less than 20 grand, homeless, black, white, so on and so forth, and you said, join this, you get benefits, but you have to move salt, you got to work with dangerous chemicals once a week, and you have to be up 6 a.m., work till 10 p.m. Those are the rules.
So essentially, you got to play our game.
No, you have to play the game.
The game. There you go. The game. Yeah.
The game is business versus war. When people were at war, those people marched for years back and forth on foot, carrying flags and metal, all to murder, completely annihilate a whole other side of people. No talks, no delegation, no open
straight war.
Yeah, your business competes against mine. There were no lawsuits. There were no complaints. There were no. That was warfare before. Now, okay, cool. So these people who are now not being whipped, not being enslaved into a military, not being forced to work in a sewer, not being forced to work in a volcano, are now complaining about their economic place in an economic structure that they refuse to honor, respect, or support. And now the people in charge of that economic structure who are benefiting from it refuse to try to understand the people who are not supporting the economic structure.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
That's more so, that's what's happening in the reality, right? The other levels by which we address the racism, the sexism, the so on and so, those are just icings on the cake. The reality is we're not getting along. This is how we're not getting along.
Yeah.
These are the shifts that we're doing. This state loves the military. This state doesn't. This state makes billions of dollars off baseball. This state makes billions of dollars off of steel. This state makes billions of dollars off of gold and silver. This state has the most amount of protesters against the gold and silver industries. We don't have a collective, cohesive performance, and we love that. But then we love the chaos. We love the variety. But when we have that in our laws, and we're the ones that get the bad end of that variety, okay, cool, yeah. We made new boxes. Who did? The Supreme Court, based off of what? What the majority populace of people wanted. What was the majority of people populace who were home? Caucasian women. What is it like talking to a Caucasian woman? That's what you're going to get when you try to operate outside of Uncle Sam's directives. You will get a financial future that is based off of the emotional states of the majority of people in that area who are looking to feel safe and comfortable and convenienced in that area. That's why most people don't give money to the homeless. They just drive on by. That's why. They just be like, nah, man, I just need to get to where I'm going. All right, cool. Now, here it is. We wanted a system that gives everybody their own little space. Okay, cool. There's limited spaces, there's big spaces, rich spaces, so on and so forth. Flood it all. Whoever makes the most money can have the nicest stuff. But they got more money in the beginning.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, we'll go back to that.
This is the new system with the chips that came with, this is the chips that were in the set. We'll make more money, but don't print too much money because then you control it too much.
Right.
You want me to give you more money, but you don't want me to print more money. No. Yes. You understand the differences?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We don't know what to ask the government for, so the government doesn't know what to give us in order to solve the problems that we are helping continue.
It's
yeah. I'll give you a real world example. Roe v. Wade. Let's go with Roe v. Wade.
Okay. Right. Yeah, wait, brief summary on Roe v. Wade. For some of us that don't know what Roe v. Wade is.
It's an abortion law within America. They already know. They're not ready for this conversation if they don't know Roe v. Wade. They can grab Wikipedia. You ain't got to break it down.
Google it. Yeah.
This conversation is for Americans who are descendants of slavery, who have questions about us. about African Americans succeeding in this country as a group in any way, shape, or form in a cohesive sense.
Right.
So I'll give you a real world example of what we are talking about here. In the same way that I said the Constitution was made in the early parts, we had to add abortion rights, contraceptives, segregation. We also had to add water rights, power grids, school funding bids. We had to add sporting events. We had to add roads, highways, dams, nuclear power sites. We had to add these things and the laws that support them based off of who is performing the best in those areas, who is the majority voters, and what do they want to have happen in that area, and what is the connection between the people. There were major disconnections between the federal government, state governments, and the general population up until recently, which is why we have so much in our faces about what is happening. So to give Roe v. Wade an example, we had slavery in this country. Black men, for long stater words, were defined as a different species. On paper, sold, branded, labeled, socially enforced, and federally allowed. Okay, got it. Speed up to 1950, we had a drug czar. Before we had all these drug agencies, we had the drug czar. The drug czar comes in and says, cannabis makes Black and Hispanic men rape white women.
Wow.
We have World War I, we have World War II going on. We also have internal and external conflicts that need a common ground to vent their bad entries. Introducing the dark hooded man complex, which is where we see it in movies. You see it in people's account of things. You see it in real world depiction, and you also see it in what people make fun of when they talk about criminals, which is usually a man with his face covered who experienced some type of high violence and in some way, shape, or form is just fine, but is also the root cause of chaos within the community. So that is what they did to African Americans, because there was a disconnect between it. If there was a concerted, centralized effort of 60% of the population wanting to eliminate 30% of the population, Black people would be gone.
Right. Okay.
We would not be here. 39 million people versus 300 million people. No. 39 versus 330 people. That's not, no. If they wanted us gone, we would be gone.
Yeah.
Okay, so there are people who want us around, people who do not want conflict. There are also people who have come to realize that Black people are not the root cause of all the things that are wrong in their communities.
Right.
So here is how Roe v. Wade comes into the scope of those things. Roe v. Wade was the perfect starting point for Caucasian women up until that point who had had multiple social trends bump their social power above their actual federal mandated limit. As in, they were asking for more things socially than they were providing federally for the United States. So when we had these different pulls and movings and we had these events along with the country expanding and buildings and dams and infrastructure being built, we looked at it where African Americans were almost outpaced. They were almost outpaced for what they were good for, which was, well, we can't put them back into slavery.
Right.
Can we? Well, we need a social instigation, something for people to dump money into centrally, because they're not doing it as communities. So they need a common threat to go after. Well, they fucked up, because then right after Roe v. Wade, which was started by a white woman lying about her being assaulted by Black men during the highest amount of time that America as a country was focused on what white women were going through, or what women needed to be entitled to in order to overcome the barriers that they were going through. We made these barriers
in between Black people and success are barriers now. Before, they were weapons against Black people. They were pieces of legislature to appease 48,000 people who were about to starve to death if they didn't build a freeway through that part of the state.
Strategies of war, wouldn't you say?
It was strategies of war, but it was also strategies of survival. Okay. The Great Depression showed how many places in America were starving to death, white and Black, without proper distribution of resources. It showed, hey, yeah, you got some people drinking champagne and sniffing cocaine and living the high life and swinging down in the cities, and you have hundreds of thousands of people living out in the middle of nowhere where there's no water, there's no power, there's nobody there helping things move along. So when we looked at all these different things that were happening, and then we look at the central thing of what's happening to Black men, defined as a different species, socially misinterpreted because there was no social place for them to get into the American machine and make things work. And so here come the war on drugs, which is, we'll get them back in the cages and get them back into the machine, and then things will start moving along again. That was a mistake, because that was an outdated programming, because it says the majority will serve the minority. America expands, Black people automatically become the minority that have to be served by the social trends and laws that white people put in place. Okay, here comes Black people wanting to destroy the system that is now finally coming around full circle to benefit them. Okay, got it. We want a new system. We want new transportation. We want to end this cycle, so on and so forth, but not before we get that mother. It doesn't work that way. Do you want peace and progress, or do you want revenge?
Peace and progress.
Okay, cool. If you want peace and progress,
oh yeah,
that's hard. That's slow. That's in any way, shape, or form. Roe v. Wade was not that. That's why Roe v. Wade was so fast. And her name was Norma McGarvey. She took money from, she had 3 kids. She never had an abortion.
Wow.
She was called the poster child who jumped off the poster. In Texas, she walked into a doctor's office, Dr. Wade at the time, and she said, I want an abortion, because she was hooking, drinking, smoking. Dr. Wade said, no, you don't have a valid medical reason to have that in the state of Texas. If you don't have a valid medical reason, I'm not going to give it. She hits the streets and says, I was assaulted by Black men, and this doctor is not going to help any white woman who gets assaulted by a group of dangerous thugs rolling the streets trying to take these cheeks. Is basically what happened. That's how a white woman not getting an abortion became a Supreme Court issue over the Cold War.
That's crazy.
You have to think about this. One woman not getting an abortion gathered more national attention than the Cold War. And white people are like, yeah, women, abortion. That's how it is. Here's the thing. We go into the war on drugs right after we ended World War I and World War II. Then we have the cities expand. Crime dips. As we also realize that there's new frontiers, which means we need more people. So there were more opportunities. And so that's why crime dipped. Abortions go up. Whole bunch of scholars put out misinformation saying, well, if abortions went up and most abortions were Black people and crime went down, that means less Black people means less crime, right?
Wrong.
Exactly. So certain states, certain cities, and certain groups continue to operate with that logic in their back pocket. Abortion is a good thing because you saw we had less Black people, we got less crime. And Roe v. Wade told you these things is wild. What happened? What happened when grizzly bears started eating people in cities? What'd they do?
Start setting traps, killing grizzly bears?
They went out and murdered every single grizzly bear out there because the grizzly bear was labeled a threat.
Threat, yeah. Okay.
Threat. When a group sees something as a threat, they either want to eliminate it or cage it. That's just how animal mechanics work. Human beings are tool-using animals. So we use tools to express hate and distrust, to eliminate, to so on and so forth. We don't do that with just our bare selves. One of the tools that we use now is our environment. It stocks and so on and so forth. Now, here comes Emmett Till. Because I believe Emmett Till happened. It's very important to know when he died. Okay. So August 28th, 1955 was all right. August 28th, 1955, when Emmett Till was killed, was pretty much exactly 10 years right after World War II ended. So you have World War II ends. You have, and if we look in the African American scope, everything else that happens, dams, bridges, cities, railroads, gangs, police, politicians, whatever. We're just looking here at this thing. Mm-hmm. You look at Roe v. Wade in that lineup of how that happens. You look at the American expansion from the Emancipation Proclamation to the Great Depression and all of the different things that the Supreme Court installed that were handed to the states, that they then handed to the groups that were in power in those areas, who then handled things based off of what the majority of people in those areas were doing, rather than following a cohesive plan, digging everything up from the front and saying, okay, group one in section one, group one, group two in section two. So there was really no master plan. Most of what we have is for a dysfunction. Mm. And case in point is we filled those gaps with businesses, with marketplaces. Whenever you walk past, if you want to look at before you see black and white wealth, look at American wealth. Before you see Chinese, native, whatever, American wealth as a whole. Okay, cool. How much of that is in makeup, fast food restaurants, the roads, water, and power to support those businesses, lash studios, gyms, all these extracurricular businesses are supported with the wealth that we would argue should be handed to us. And if the government said, well, you got 200 Wendy's, 500 Burger Kings,
1,000 McDonald's.
We didn't build that.
Right.
Y'all did. We don't support it. It's not Uncle Sam going to go hit 43rd and Southampton. Make sure the Dairy Queen stay in line. That's not him.
Yeah.
What are Americans doing with the money that they are getting now? Okay, cool. That question was not asked until when? Until we asked for full equality. Mm-hmm. We asked for all groups to be gathered up and judged to one standard economically. And that's when all of these things about broken families and divorce rates and so on and so forth, instead of this is how much money people are making with degrees now. No, they showed the damage that happened inside of our family and communities. Okay, that is what this Roe v. Wade thing has done. And that should show you on how a mass populace of people were allowed to raise one singular icon that pushed social trends into federal laws that disseminated from top level to mid-level to south level, low level, and affected different groups of people, but one main group of people in a bad way. Mm-hmm. Mm. While every single fuck up that comes out of that process needed a new law, a new case, a new jury, a new set of people to respond to and box that there where it's at.
Right.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, shit, we put it in the box. Now it's starting to rot, starting to stand out there. Oh, shit, we'll take it apart now. I can't take it apart. Line it up. I'm building things on top of it. That's right. What actually happened.
Yeah.
And now, here it comes where the whole thing flips. When you have a system where the majority serves the minority, and you have a minority class that was defined as a different species, and then you pass at the top level laws to protect species that are endangered. And then we say it all the time, people are what? He's a different animal. Mm. We put the logic of what we do into what we do. So when white people are racist, they racist for real. from the economic side to the health side,
Yeah.
the whole way across.
Yeah.
However, there's a difference between someone believing you are bad for their entire existence versus someone hating you because of the color of your skin.
Ooh, come
There's
on.
a difference between somebody hating what you represent versus someone knowing that if more people like you come into existence, their family, their land, their water, their air, their freedoms will be infringed upon. Right now, let me put it like this. If you moved right back to the upper hills, right? And you moved your whole family up there, and then you found out that, oh snap, the state has a law that says if we have a certain amount of black people here, we all get like, an extra 50 grand off our taxes or whatever.
Yeah.
And now, right, here come Irish Americans, straight out of indentured slave, whatever's been happening, Belfast, the London people, they've been living off potatoes and in jail cells for like 25 years.
Yeah.
They finally got their reparations and now they're moving here. But if more than 10 people take over each or move into each neighborhood, y'all start to lose that $50,000 benefit. What's more important, these people having homes or making sure that you continue making money?
I mean, for me, I'd rather them have shelter and homes, but I would like to be an entrepreneur and provide those homes for them.
Here's the thing. When it comes to humanity, there are no entrepreneurs. There are providers, leaders, and workers, period.
But in the American society, that's a capitalistic society. We make that exception, right? To entrepreneurship.
No, we don't.
Okay.
We don't.
All right.
Entrepreneurship is allowed by the government because it produces more money and produces more energy than the government can do on its own from managing the people forcefully.
Wow.
It is not an avenue to success for people to free themselves from the very nation's systems that they rely on and expect to work every time they use the roads or the sink. So back to the Roe v. Wade thing. We have now evolved to the case where we now have a government, we now have a currency system, we now have multiple layers of lenses to understand where we went wrong. And the government needs at least another 10 years just to get ahead of the backlog. And that's why every presidential election, there's going to be problems with it. It wasn't just Trump that had a problem with the vote count. We've had problems with the vote count almost every election.
Yeah.
That's why we've had to have new committees every single presidential election to manage that. Back to the Roe v. Wade thing. No one looked at how much money abortion was going to cost the African-American community. When you take that many women and you make them unable to have children, that's a different conversation. And now when we talk about, and I'm going to give you back, how does that all circle back to what would the black people do with so on and so forth? Okay. Abortion was a mostly white-centric, white-supported, white represented issue when it first hit. Okay. Mm-hmm. Which means in order for such a large amount of black women to be having abortions, how did they come into contact with this jungle? If they were in their communities, if they were at home with their fathers, with their mothers, with their sisters, if they were working inside of their family businesses, if they were developing their studies, if they were playing chess, if they were helping each other develop and succeed, while the majority of men had been called out to war, drafted, or imprisoned, where, right. How?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So if we are putting in realistic, this is something that I'm telling you right now, I've had drinks.
Interesting.
Right? If we did go to the government and we said, run them checks, run them pockets, and we found out that all black people were under, we owed the government money. And not only that, right? The government pulled out a piece of paper and said that our birth rate doesn't support the amount of money we're asking for. We won't have enough Black people in a few years to use the money that we're asking for. What will we say then? Where are you gonna go get more Black people?
Right, yeah.
Where are you just gonna go make some more descendants of slavery?
Right.
You can't, because then you dilute that genetic pool along with the socioeconomic problems of the groups of the other people who are involved. Okay, cool. Well, dang. Well, let's just go to let's make it a cutoff system. Cut off by what? We are putting a price, a name, and a label on something that God made in order to settle problems that man will not give up on. So, and arguing why God has not come down to settle it.
Yeah.
So, back to the Roe v. Wade thing and what that has to do with us. Now that these systems are starting to reverse and they're starting to shipwright, and people are coming to grips with the frustration of knowing that the transition process will outlive them. They will live with these tragedies that they know the solutions to before those tragedies are absolved. Now we are coming into these times. And when I got into that amount of fear and that amount of money that had been garnered in the 1970s, and then literally right after that, boom, here come the war on drugs. What was the war on drugs based off of? Removing criminals. Who are criminals? People who pursue the innocent. Okay, in a white society, what is the most innocent, fair, elegant creature? The white woman. She needs to be protected. She needs to be kept safe, away from all harm. They literally make a new movie every week about it. And what is the problem with the movies is that they raise their youth on 10,000 hours of movies and 200 hours of real human time. Right? We even noted this with many police departments who spent 1,000 hours in firearms training, 2 hours in an online class with human or civics classes. Right? What type of person is that going to produce? And now you have the African-American community where we were going down to find children who spend 10,000 hours on sports and video games.
And then the negative influences.
100 hours with real people. Right. And now we're asking them to keep up with the times, to become aware as a person, to manage a checkbook, to help out with their community, to volunteer in their service hours, to help clean up the ocean, to use less power and water, to understand what sacrifices they need to make and what revenges they are not allowed to ask for in order for these things to move along as a group. Okay. Abortion showed that Black women as a group are more willing to listen to white women who want more dead babies than they want Black people in America.
Wow.
That is what abortion showed. It showed that white women wanted something. Black women rallied to it, destroyed half of our ability to have other human beings like us. And now saying, well, God, I mean, money, we ready to make proper economic decisions.
That's heavy. That's real heavy.
But it's real.
Right.
Difference between what we believe, what we read, and what we experience.
The numbers don't lie.
Between that and what's happening.
Right.
Case point, when it rains, right? When it rains, if you outside without a jacket, you get wet. Life sucks, right? It's all up in your boots. It's all fucked up. But around you, that rain is providing life to every plant from miles around. Now, on the other end, that rain is getting into somebody's engine and it's fucking up their ability to go to work. Another block, that thing is feeding trees. What I'm saying is the rain is falling. That's what's happening. This person is getting wet. This person is getting their farm water. This person is getting fresh rainwater to stock up for the next season. This person is getting their land flooded and they just lost their dog, their car, and their hay. The rain is falling. But what's happening on this farm or that farm is different. Okay, got it. We did that to Black people unintentionally. We flushed them south and moved them to all different parts of the country where there were different laws, different people, different power structures in place, and nobody was there to explain that or settle that. So now we're coming into this. What I'm saying is, I just showed you a real world example of what white people want versus what black people need, and what the government has sworn to do to make sure that bare minimum, at least 10% of each group survives. We have forced the government into a referee position more so than an enforcer position. Mm-hmm. And now we keep beating that drum like, well, why aren't they enforcing the things that we want? Because then when the next group needs us to be cracked down on, well, we don't want that. So what I'm saying is, when I started to understand the miscommunications involved, and I started to understand the work required of me to get these things done, it really did scare me. It really did throw me back. And then I told all my friends, and only one of my friends, one of my brothers stepped up and came out to me he came out with me to Iraq, Afghanistan, Germany, Poland. He really supported and worked alongside me and helped me understand the different things that we were seeing. And when we came back as African Americans, when we came back as black men, when we came back as niggas, when we came back as homeowners, when we came back as business, when we came back, this list of things that did not say Darren Scott Evans. So that is more so the problem that you're going to argue with. That is the system more so that you're going to argue with than the government.
Yeah.
So, because this system represents a list that tells me I get the good and the bad of these labels that are attached to these social trends that fall into voter patterns, that fall into federal laws, that enforce what the majority of that populace in that area want. And those populaces do not work cohesively across the national scale. They compete.
Right.
Actually.
Yeah.
Almost down to whatever. So what did the government do? They said, okay, well, cool. They broke the ability to be king. One of the things that is in the Constitution is it bans titles of nobility. So that's why everyone is allowed to be a king in his own castle. Everyone's allowed to be an isolationist. Everybody's allowed to walk off into the forest and live in a tent. You're allowed to be the king of whatever castle you build in America. That's not enough.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's a beautiful thing, and maybe we should look at it as being enough.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
If we did, we would be able to look at what do we have.
Right.
Now, I'm going to answer something that you've been mad about. Wow.
Go ahead. What's that?
I went and looked into it. Statistics by white scholars proposing that not as many black people are suffering as proposed, which basically people announce the black experience that has been happening. I want to note that there's a difference between me explaining how the government, history, and we as a nation operate based off of my theories and experiences versus me saying that this is how people should think, versus me honoring that there's a world of things that I do not know. However, there have been multiple things out of the University of Stanford and the University of Florida, the Pew Research Institute, that have come out about the war on drugs, African Americans, and the tie to the American economy that are outright wrong because the studies have the wrong intention. So like police brutality, perfect example. If I divide it into pro-police, anti-police, as far as for on the white and the black sides, the majority of research that I found to disprove was to show that more white people died from police than black people. And therefore that means that America has moved on from racism. Have you heard this argument?
I have, yeah.
And what has been your answer to that?
Well, I don't think they're including that white America is the majority and they have a greater population. So I don't think they break that down per the capita in those studies.
Here's why they don't break down the capita, because they don't know what they're looking for.
Mm.
They are looking for the amount of people who died at the police's hands. They are not looking for the who, what, when, where, why, and how that many Black folk ended up in prison. That much money got put toward arresting a specific demographic of people.
Right.
That much money, that many drugs, that many weapons arrived in a city into the hands of the people who were descendants of slaves with no connections to the government, the power grid, or the water grid.
Right.
But somehow, some way knew how to transport all this stuff into the country.
Right. Yeah.
Didn't manufacture them AK-47s. I'll tell you that right now. I'll tell you, if they got a bunch of AK-47s and all the heavy weaponry that I saw in California, none of them said product of Compton. Not
Right.
one.
Right.
So when I understood that I was on a preserve, I was on a literal, real life mix up of the movie Predators and Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? The movie Life with Eddie Murphy and Predators with Lawrence Fishburne. Mix those two together. That was the war on drugs. The idea was not to kill Black men. It was to capture and enslave Black men.
Right.
And when we look at, they came in, when I started traveling the country to hear this racism is over aspect. Racism
That's crazy.
is over because it was not practiced only in one channel. It was practiced in many of the lower end channels below the federal government. The federal government changes over, and we have very few people who stay there for 40 something years. And for the most part, we try to remain stable within our government cycles.
So you're saying it was practiced more at a state level?
Yeah, of course. It was. Case in point, the moment I joined the military and left California, that's when I started meeting white women who went from calling me scary to calling me exotic. That's when I went from seeing police calling me nigga to calling me sir. That's when I went from being spit on to right now, there's a group of white women in booty shorts walking past my house, looking at my house saying, dang, that's a real nice house. I bet he's there. They're fixing their hair. They're preparing for their impression of the man who owns this house. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. Can you hear me okay? We're frozen, it looks like.
Yeah. So I should it's probably because you're nearing the time limit. That's when it gets like this. So but to finish what I was saying is that racism is not viewed the way that it's happening. It is not classified the way that it's happening. It is not, I would put racism with as many misconceptions and misunderstandings as sexism. Right now, I went from, in my lifetime, I went from being told that 75% of women in college are raped or sexually assaulted. I never knew that as a grown man, I would be injured in Iraq and find out the law was based off of the laws based off of female protection were based off of studies that were done at random colleges. They asked a bunch of random women, have you ever been touched without your consent, even by family members or a boyfriend, even if it's not abusive? They counted, and that's how they got to those amount of numbers. And I said they started to generalize and try to blur the lines to get as many people into that category to make a crisis, to make a sensation. And the people who believed that that crisis was happening said, well, there has to be a head to hang. There has to be a man responsible. Black men. Black men not working for this country in the places they should be is the reasons that things are fucked up. So when I understood that, I joined the military and I left California. Immediate change in how I was treated, in my survival statistics, in my ability to move around, in my access to knowledge, in my ability to live within a group. Immediate change. And so that was something that I have always shared with every Black man that I've met, because that net is about to get a lot wider. everything that has been happening with Black people is about to start happening with white people, which is why they have such a problem with it. When it was a majority Black populace who were homeless and displaced, a huge amount of the Native American population displaced, nothing. Now that it's more white women being homeless, we have a homeless crisis. Now that it's more white youth shooting up schools and overdosing, we have a opioid crisis.
Yeah.
It was a drug war when Black people were using drugs.
Right.
Okay.
That's a drug epidemic.
So now you have almost what looks like a full operation. You have white scholars studying statistics to disprove the Black experience based off of being an American descendant of slavery, living in an environment that continues to try to benefit off of our enslavement or death. Okay. In the middle of that, you have what's actually happening, which is multiple levels of government and powerful groups and voter groups and interest groups malfunctioning, miscommunicating, and operating only in their better interests rather than their cohesive collective interests.
Right.
And then on the opposite end, you have all of the Black people who have finally gotten smart enough to say, fuck, we getting a bad deal.
Right.
All of them. Everybody's out to get me. No, it's just raining. That's all it is. It's just raining. So now that I understood that, I let you know that. I'm telling you, it's been changing the mindset is one thing, but honoring the reality of what you have exposed is a whole nother thing. And I'm gonna tell you right now, if there are sharks in those waters, don't jump in the waters. If there is dangers out there in the woods, don't go out there at night. If there is a benefit to staying grounded and having a positive cycle, then you can be all right. Oh, you got that fixed up. Oh, you got different cameras?
Yeah. Listen, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear and see you.
Yeah, my thing is frozen. Oh, no, that's deep. I enjoy how you brought that all back around too. But I'm still a little, I don't want to say stuck on this, but I still have a deep belief that in some fashion, there are orchestrators orchestrating this continuum.
Of course there are.
Cycle of divide and conquer, continue to create failure.
Yes.
And let's benefit off that failure. Let's figure out a way to benefit from that failure. And let's put the failure on the Negro, because I feel like in some cases they believe that the Negro aren't seeing their choices clear. The Negro is still operating in business bitterness. The Negro is still pointing the blame at everyone else instead of looking into the mirror. And, you know, I've argued, I don't want to say argued, I've actually asked myself that question of, are we our number one, are we our worst enemy? Are we giving in to this system that's created for us to bottom out and fail so that a way they can continue to fill up the prisons and continue the failure rates in the schools? And while this failure is being trickled down and spread out, there's big businesses that are benefiting from it. And so my question is, and this is really, we completely got off of our framework, but you know, my question is like, are we our biggest enemy? And when we look at, you know, I have a biracial family, you know, interracial wife, or interracial couple, biracial children, and you have biracial children. And I had a discussion with one of my colleagues, and I asked her, you know, being a biracial family and having an interracial relationship, would I be considered a Black family? And she said no. And I argued against that. I believe that we would be considered a Black and white family. But to my question though, and that kind of fits within it.
Whoa. Do you want to reset this and like recall and re-record, because it keeps blacking out?
It's even on my phone, huh?
Yeah. You want to just let's just call back in?
Let's see if we can do that. Let me hang on. Let me see if I can.
Yeah.
That's very weird.
Because you keep blacking out, and I was talking back, but you didn't hear me.
Okay. Yeah, let's do that. I'll bring it back.
Okay.
All right.